What if the quietest stretch of Young Thug's career was never quiet at all? Just a slow burn designed to make the next ignition feel inevitable. For months, the moves were careful. Sparse appearances, controlled conversations, a rollout that looked more like a mirage than a plan. Then, almost overnight, a clip circulated, timeline split, and the same three questions started bouncing from platform to platform. Why now? Why this? And why right when the album rumors started sounding real? The answer many fans landed on wasn't hidden in a courtroom clip or a stray interview. It was written in the sky. UY Scuti, a star so massive the name itself feels like a statement. Not just a title, but a temperature. Not just an era, but a radius. If the music is the center, this is the gravity. And that's where tonight's story lives. In the gap between what we know and what we think we're seeing, in an album name that turns speculation into fuel, and in a hunger for clarity that only the songs can satisfy. That's the game. And this is how it's being played. Let's stitch the last few years into something that actually makes sense. First came the case. Headlines, hearings, hard pauses. It put an artist known for motion into a forced stillness and made the industry itself feel like it was holding its breath. While the calendar dragged, the conversation didn't. Everyone had a theory. Everyone had a verdict. Somewhere in the middle of that noise, music didn't stop. It just went underwater. Quiet studio nights. Whispers about records taking shape. Occasional sightings that felt more like proof of life than promotional moments. And then, at the faint edge of the storm, a title surfaced. UY Scuti. The name landed like a flare. Not a promise exactly, a signal. A reminder that when you choose a star that size to frame your return, you're telling people to expect heat. That's the part most timelines miss. They jump from courtrooms to conspiracies, skipping the patient work behind a real pivot. But the pivot is there. It's the slow turn of a ship, the hum before a stage light hits. And if you follow the markers, studio hints, cryptic posts, fans catching fragments where they can, you start to see a pattern. The story isn't sudden. The conversation is. The plan has been moving the whole time, the audience just finally caught up to it. And that's where everything accelerates. When an interrogation room clip lands on the internet, it doesn't arrive as information. It arrives as a sensation. It's not a chapter, it's a spark. It doesn't explain, it provokes. That's what happened here. One clip, 1,000 interpretations. Some voices stamped it as proof of hypocrisy. Others pushed back, calling it sliced, diced, and ripped from context. The result wasn't clarity. It was a tug of war, a moral debate packaged as a trending topic. That's how the web works. It doesn't ask what's true, it asks what's clickable. And in a week where the word snitch was being thrown around like confetti, the actual question got lost. What does any of this mean for the music? Because whether you love Young Thug or love to argue about him, the center of gravity is always the record. That's the only place intent survives. That's the only place context can't be cut out. So the clip did what clips do. It bent the room for a moment. It created heat, but heat without light doesn't last. So eyes drifted back to the title that never needed a clip to spark conversation in the first place. UY Scuti. Even people who don't care about astronomy know what that name implies. Size, heat, change. The kind of change that breaks things and makes things at the same time. And that pulled the discourse back toward the music where it belongs. Here's the plain version. UY Scuti is one of the largest known stars we've measured. A red supergiant that exists on a scale the human brain isn't built to picture. Think of it as a metaphor you can see from anywhere. Big enough to stand in for rebirth, for endings that create beginnings, for a life lived under pressure and still expanding. Fans didn't need a press release to make that connection. They mapped it themselves. Red supergiants live hot. They shed, they reshape. They can collapse and explode in an event that writes new elements into the universe. That's the scientific story. The emotional story practically writes itself. After years of public trial, literal and cultural, a star that symbolizes total transformation is a clean banner to rally behind. It's not subtle. It's not supposed to be. It's the opposite of subtle on purpose. In an era when attention fragments every second, you pick a symbol that can hold the room on its own. A name that turns a track list into a thesis the moment you read it. And if you're an artist who understands how myth moves, you know that names are pressure valves. They release steam, they signal direction. They let you control what people talk about when the topics you can't control start crowding the feed. It's not mystical, it's just smart. And it's a reminder that the biggest pop culture tricks aren't tricks at all. They're choices, titles, colors, covers, a star name that makes everyone recalibrate tone before they even hear the intro. Rollouts don't look like billboards anymore. They look like breadcrumbs. A photo that feels like a chapter header, a half-heard hook in a festival recap, a trollish date that guarantees screenshots. The goal isn't to convince, it's to compel. Get people to chase, get them to argue about what counts as confirmed. That's the oxygen modern releases run on. And the UY Scuti chatter has followed that pattern exactly. Reports repeat the core facts. The title's set, the vision is ambitious, the timing aims for a post-trial reset. Around that spine, the rumor machine does what it always does, attaching names to features, assigning meaning to color palettes, reading captions like tea leaves. If you zoom out and strip all of that down, a clearer picture appears. The marketing is a prism. Turn it and you see something else. Keep turning and you realize the story doesn't need to settle. It just needs to spin until the music lands. That's the brilliance of controlled scarcity. It makes every fragment feel important. It makes every theory feel productive. It keeps the audience warm without burning the plan. And if you pay attention to the timing, the cadence of teases, the small injections of certainty, there's a rhythm under it. Not random, conducted. Even the noise has a pattern if you're patient enough to listen. There's a difference between reading into art and reading over it. Fans are always going to connect dots. That's part of the fun. And when you pick a star like UY Scuti for your headline, you're inviting people to map cosmic metaphors onto everything else. Cover art, color schemes, fonts, even the way a teaser video cuts to black. The most popular theory threads orbit the same three themes: birth, death, rebirth. People point to triads in the imagery, to red-gold palettes that suggest heat and cooling, to circular motifs they swear mimic stellar cycles. Others pull in the constellation Scutum, Latin for shield, to spin readings about protection and trial by fire. Then the threads go deeper, connecting earlier visuals, old interviews, old performances, searching for a through line that can retroactively explain how we got here. The responsible way to navigate all that is simple. Enjoy it like cinema. Treat it as a parallel world made by fans for fans. If it entertains you, that's value. If it helps you lock into the emotional arc of a record, even better. Just don't let it replace the record. Music is not a mirror held up to the most viral theory of the week. It's the opposite. It's the anchor. The lore is the wind. The songs are the keel. Without the keel, the boat doesn't steer. So walk the rabbit hole. Post the threads. Make the connections that thrill you. But when the album drops, let the songs tell you what was really on the artist's mind. Lore without lyrics is a maze. Lyrics without lore are a message. Expect pressure. Expect posture. Expect a voice that sounds like it's balancing on a wire. One step for the audience that wants a statement, one step for the audience that wants a flex. The smartest way to address a storm is to change the weather, not argue about the forecast. That's what music does. Anticipate a sequence where loyalty and distance live in the same breath. The verses might feel surgical, cold edges, clipped images, lines built like trapdoors. Hooks might open up into the airless, glossy space that always made his best records feel expensive and dangerous at the same time. If there are features, expect them to be used as contrast more than comfort. Not crowd pleasers for the sake of it, but voices that draw the silhouette sharper. And don't be surprised if the first run of tracks refuses to give you what the timeline wants. That's a common move when the conversation outside the studio gets too loud. You don't feed the riot, you make them walk through a door they didn't expect. Then, maybe midway, you flip the switch. One record that either says the quiet part out loud or reframes it with enough wit to make the debate feel old. Not a press release, a surgical strike. After that, the album can breathe. It can try joy. It can try intimacy. It can do the neon heartbreak that always sits well on late-night drives. It can do the crooked lullabies and the metallic march. The point is authorship. The point is choosing what gets immortalized and what gets left out. If UY Scuti is what the title implies, it won't just be a pile of songs, it will be a shape. There are always two camps. The business camp says this is textbook. Control scarcity, pick a headline that does symbolism for you, let the discourse metabolize the pain, and arrive right on time with a record that turns temperature into numbers. The myth camp says that's too tidy. It sees a master narrative weaving years together, the trial as crucible, the silence as cocoon, the star as rebirth, the cover as map. The business camp has receipts, streams, tickets, margins, chart stats. The myth camp has resonance, the feeling that the arc means more than metrics. Here's the truth almost nobody admits in the heat of an argument. Both sides want the same thing: impact. The business side measures it. The myth side explains it. One tells you where the wave is, the other tells you why you can't forget it. When an artist is really firing, those two lenses don't clash. They amplify. The rollout makes the conversation impossible to ignore. The music turns it into something you can't shake. If UY Scuti lands like that, the debate collapses into applause. If it doesn't, the symbolism becomes trivia, and the title becomes a headline you used to remember. That's the razor's edge. That's the bet this era is making. There's a reason artists retreat after years of public scrutiny. Large-scale attention isn't just loud, it's corrosive. It sands the edges off private life until everything feels like a performance. Even silence gets read like a statement. Smile, statement. Frown, statement. A skipped event, statement. A late post, statement. Controversy turns every ordinary choice into evidence for arguments you never meant to join. In that kind of climate, a title like UY Scuti works like a shield and a lens. It says, if you need a symbol, use this one. It also says, back up and look at the whole picture. It reframes the artist as a system, not a headline. A star has phases. It expands. It sheds. It goes dark. It returns. It might collapse into something that reorders everything around it. That isn't about conspiracy. It's about scale. And when you operate at that scale, the only way to survive is to write rules that make the pressure feel purposeful. That's what a good album does. It collects scattered narratives and consolidates them into a single tone, even if that tone is complicated, especially if it is. Streaming made us all curators. Every play a vote, every skip a no, every save a tiny signature at the bottom of an invisible contract between artist and audience. If UY Scuti is meant to be a true reset, that contract is the only one that matters. Not the hot take that travels the fastest, not the clip that makes your group chat go quiet. The listen. The whole listen. First, because the shape of a project reveals itself only after you stop slicing it into singles that match your mood. Second, because the easiest way to misread intent is to enforce your needs onto a record that's doing something else. And third, because albums like this aren't only about what an artist says, they're about what an artist refuses to say. The negative space is part of the message. The withheld detail is part of the design. The verse that dodges a name and lands on a feeling isn't a cop-out. It's a choice about legacy. That's what lasts longer than a news cycle. That's what people hum in 5 years when they don't remember the discourse that tried to define the week. If UY Scuti connects, watch how quickly the conversation moves. The headline will stop being, "Did he address it?" and start being, "Which records are undeniable?" The center of gravity will shift from theory threads to tour clips, from court recaps to crowd videos, from leaked room drama to setlist debates. Collaborators will get a bump. Producers will unlock a price tier. Promoters will start circling stadiums instead of arenas. Brands that kept a quiet distance will ask for a meeting. And the most interesting change will be the smallest one, the way fans talk about his voice again. When the music snaps people back, the voice becomes the map. The slur of syllables that feel like chrome scraping concrete. The sudden clarity of a bar that lands like a confession. The way a hook can feel both serpentine and simple at once. That's the fingerprint. When that's all anyone wants to dissect, you know the album has done its job. It made the art louder than the argument. Every big swing risks a loud silence. If the album doesn't convert heat into habit, the symbolism will turn dim faster than it arrived. The title will feel like a headline outpacing the paragraph. The fragments will feel like a puzzle that never clicks. And yet, Even in that version, the era still matters. It teaches. It sets a boundary. It proves which levers still work and which ones don't. It clarifies what an audience wants when a life has been through a public grinder. Some eras are about dominance, others are about definition. The latter are just as valuable. They make future choices cleaner. They make the records after feel inevitable. And sometimes, the second swing is the one that breaks the wall everyone thought was permanent. There's always one. The track you can sense lurking in the back half. The one built like a sealed letter finally opened. You'll know it when it arrives. The production won't beg for attention. The writing will. The voice will slow down, not to be dramatic, but to make the syllables hit like stones in a bucket. No names if names would cheapen it. No victory laps if victory would make it smaller. Just pressure let out with the kind of control that makes the rest of the album feel like staging. And when it ends, you'll feel the shape of the project settle. If it's done right, the arguments will keep happening. But they'll happen in the orbit of the songs, not as a substitute for them. That's the sign a record owns its narrative. People can debate, but they can't escape the melodies while they do it. Artists don't return to who they were. They can't. Too many variables have changed. The pressure, the stakes, the perception, the math. Every comeback is a brand new person wearing a legacy like a jacket that fits differently than it used to. If UY Scuti is the reset the title suggests, it'll accept that truth instead of pretending nothing happened. It won't ask for innocence. It'll demand competence. It won't try to rewind. It'll ask the room to meet it where it is. And if the music is strong enough, the room will move. That's the magic no headline can manufacture. Songs change facts on the ground. A chorus you can't stop humming makes you forget you were keeping score. A verse that hits a nerve makes you forgive what you swore you wouldn't. That's not manipulation. That's the core exchange of this whole culture. You bring your life, I'll bring mine, and somewhere between the beat and the breath, we'll make something neither of us could make alone. So what is UY Scuti going to be? A calculated pivot wrapped in a star-sized metaphor, or the record that turns all the static into signal? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe it becomes the rare thing that outgrows the questions that birthed it. Only one test matters. What happens to your face when the hook lands? Do you feel the heat of the name? Do you hear the distance between the last chapter and this one? Do you stop thinking about the clip, the comment section, the clever theory thread, and start thinking about the next time you can run the album front to back without talking at all? That answer lives in you, not the timeline. Drop your take below. What are you listening for on day one? A direct address? A line that reframes the last 2 years? Or a record so undeniable it makes the argument feel small? Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a like if you enjoyed the video. It really helps the channel grow and makes sure you never miss the next upload.